Do you plan on
It
recording
was,
that, like an
yeah.
actual recording, or?
I've done a few like parody stuff before. I think especially, like there's a lot of people that go on YouTube and they do like pop goes metal covers, and
Yeah.
they don't touch the lyrics at all. They just like add some distortion guitars and some blast beats, and it's like, oh, now it's metal. Which is cool, but sometimes I'm like, it's a little bit lazy. We could spice up the lyrics. We could change it. And the one you mentioned was just really like an accident. It was during my birthday stream where someone asked for me to sing Barbie Girl, and like I started doing it.
Yeah.
And halfway through, I'm like, no, I am not singing these lyrics. These are god awful lyrics. I am not doing it. And the very next day, I was in my kitchen. I was cooking, and the song was stuck in my head, of course, because it's freaking catchy.
It's catchy, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just singing, and, instead of saying, like, I'm a Barbie girl, I went, I'm a metal girl. And I'm like, wait, you got something there.
There you go. I'm a metal girl.
Yeah.
It fits better.
It's better, and I rewrote the lyrics in a way where it's, like, cool for a metalhead. They can relate, so.
For sure.
Yeah, I could see myself doing more of that, over on Twitch. For sure.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. So, who are your heroes? Who do you point at as your heroes, your influences?
I don't know. This question always like puts me on the spot a little bit because, like I mentioned earlier, I have a very wide range of like musical genres that I listen to. Uh-huh. So I wasn't ever one of those people where it's like, I can point out 2 or 3 people and that's it, and just be like, when I was young, I aspired to be them, because like when I was younger, when I first listened to Linkin Park or Evanescence, I was like, oh, Amy Lee's amazing, Chester Bennington's amazing, Then I moved on. I discovered like Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford, and then I moved on and I discovered Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth, or Michael Stan from Dark Tranquillity, like heavier death metal vocals, And then that goes for like with every genre. For example, when it comes to like later on in my life, I discovered like bands like Whitechapel and Phil Bozeman, huge influence.
Awesome.
So I could give you like 30 different vocalists that I, in each genre, that like I took something from. Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many to narrow down for sure. Yep.
Yeah, but I do know that some vocalists just have, like their top 3 that influence them, and to this day, like 20 years later, they could tell you, yeah, this is my top 3. For me, it just keeps growing and expanding. Like I keep discovering vocalists and genres of music that I'm like, whoa, they're awesome, and it's an influence for me. And I think that's probably why you get that variety of vocals when it comes to my own approach, because I do have this crazy, variety of vocalists that I've listened to.
Speaking of heroes and influences, is there anything on your bucket list you want to, do? Anyone in special you'd like to collaborate with? Something in the future? Maybe do something with one of your heroes,
I don't know. I can't say I've really thought of that. I just love collaborating in general. And last year, I recorded like 5 or 6 or 7 collaborations that are due to come out at some point. All different genres. I think for me, when it comes to collaborations, it's about doing something different. So if it doesn't sound like my work with the Agonist or like my work with SICKSENSE, and it's something that I really enjoy, I'll do it regardless of who is in the project, Yeah.
Awesome. So let's speak about Orphans, the latest album with the Agonist, of course. What was the process there? Talk to us about the writing process, the lyrics, the arrangements. I know that was right before the pandemic, I know that, but how do you guys do that? Who does the lyrics and who does the arrangements?
Well, that was actually a lot soon. Like it's been a minute. Like the album came out in 2019, late 2019, and then we had the pandemic. But it was actually written in early 2018. So for me, right now we're approaching 3.5 years since that process was done, which is weird. I know it still feels fresh to some people, but for me, it's like not. But the process was pretty much what we've been doing for the past, like, since I joined the band. The guys work on the music, the instrumentals, and they send it to me, and then I check it out, and I write my lyrics and my vocals at home. I tell them if I want any adjustments to, like, the structure, or maybe changing up a riff or something, and just back and forth through computers, because I live in Chicago, they live in Montreal, and it's just a very efficient way of writing, I believe. And we just do that until the demos are done and until it's time to go into the studio and record the final thing.
Wow, very cool. So it's virtual, basically, yeah.
Yeah, which is good, actually, because since we've been full virtual since before the pandemic, doing it again during the pandemic was pretty much the same.
Yeah,
you know?
Nothing new.
Yeah.
So talk to us about joining the Agonist. Did you go on tour right away, or what happened first? A rehearsal, a couple of rehearsals?
Yeah. Well, first we wrote music together. That was the very first thing. We did like one or two rehearsals maybe, but nothing too serious. When I first came to Montreal joining the band, we went straight into songwriting mode to write Eye of Providence. And then we went on our first tour about 6 months after that, I believe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was just go, go, go. Ever since I joined this band, it's been go, 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 you know, which is good.
Awesome. Any advice you can give to new or up-and-coming bands?
Advice, yes. Okay. I guess my advice from my perspective and from my journey in music would be that if you are serious about the music that you're creating and your trajectory and, you know, being a professional touring band or a musician in general, my advice would be to treat it as such.
Right.
I basically gave up on everything else at the age of 20 or 21, and I decided that I would be a full-time musician. And the first couple of years were rough. I would, you know, stay at home, not go out and party like the rest of my friends, because we all know earning money off of music, especially metal music, is impossible.
It's tough, yeah.
So, yeah, the first few years were rough. I was just, you know, getting by, living life really frugally, I guess. And but that gave me all the time in the world to practice my instrument and get better at it. Whereas I tried for a few months, you know, doing the 9 to 5 and then coming home from work and practicing, but you don't have the energy, you don't have the mindset, you're just happy to be home after a full day of work.
Yeah.
And if you treat it as a hobby, you're never going to get to that level that you want to be, whether it's, the level could be with your own, you know, output musically, but it could also be with the other things that you have to do as a musician now, because it's not just about singing or playing guitar or playing drums. It's also about, okay, being active on social media, being engaging with your fans, business calls, reaching out to people. You know, it's a full-time job. So
marketing.
My advice would be treat it as such. Even if you're not making money, even if you're losing money, one day you will, and you just kind of have to battle through that till it happens.
Good advice. Nice. So
Thank
what's on your playlist? What do you listen to as a fan or just to enjoy, you know?
So recently I actually came up with this really cool idea because I have a Patreon and we have a Discord server. And one of my patrons is a huge music fan. He's also a journalist, and he basically every Friday he makes a list of all the new releases, singles, albums, all that, and his personal picks as well. And it's been really cool because I find, because I am a musician and because I do music all day long, sometimes my ears are tired, you know, and I don't want to listen to music.
Yeah.
And for that reason, it's been really hard for me to discover new music. So with this system, it's like I told him, can you make a playlist, like our version of like new metal tracks, and update it every week?
Yeah.
And I have that playlist. I also put it on my Twitch streams in the beginning where I'm talking. And it's just playing, you know, in the background. And sometimes I'll listen to something and I'll be like, oh, what's that, you know? And it's been really cool because I've discovered, tracks from younger maybe bands, or maybe I just never heard of them.
Yeah.
Like a good example is I really enjoyed. I'll give you a few bands. Vexed, Dream Shade, New Architects. That's been really cool.
Cool.
Our Hollow, Our Home, Beartooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, all these are. I'm just looking at the list right now, naming them. Thrice.
Oh yeah.
A lot of good Orbit Culture. Shadow of Intent. Really enjoyed their newest single as well. So yeah, it's really cool because I feel like I have a gap in my musical education. I feel like I know everything that's going on up until a certain year, and then I just have this gap of where I was trying so hard to do music that I lost track of like what other young bands were doing, and now I'm kind of making up for that.
Yeah, you try to stay up to date, I guess, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's good when you have a playlist like catered to you. Like I have a person that I trust that has a big, likes a lot of genres of music. He even put in like a Billie Eilish track, for example, and I kind of have him there, filtering through everything. And it's like the playlist could go from like extreme death metal 8-minute track to catchy pop punk 3-minute single.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. Yeah.
That's cool. I run an online radio station, J-Rock's Metal Zone, and I do same situation. I have to be keeping up with the new metal, new rock. And but that's fun too. You can't just stay.
Oh, for sure.
You're stuck to kill them all or whatever. So that's cool. Stay up to date.
Yeah. Definitely.
So can you give us your best gig and your worst gig?
Oh.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, because there's a lot of good ones and there's a lot of bad ones. Okay, I have the bad one first.
Okay.
Probably. And it was just a personal worst gig. Maybe my bandmates could name a different one. The worst one I ever played was on a U.S. tour somewhere in Indiana. And we played this venue that their equipment was just horrible. It was horrible. Like, I don't know what it sounded like from the crowd. I don't want to know. I just know all the problems that we had. And we weren't headlining, so there was another band after us. So we had very little time before going up on stage during our line check to make sure everything was working.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working. Specifically, my in-ears were not working. And there was no, I believe there was no foot stage monitor that I could use, or it was already taken up for the guitar players, and it was just not enough time to convert,
Wow. Horrible.
So I went on, I went on stage and I did a 45-minute set with absolutely no monitoring whatsoever.
Wow.
I still wore my in-ears because at least that gave me a little bit of isolation, and I could hear just a little bit of my own voice in my head, which is not at all ideal. It's far from ideal. I struggled a lot. But my main worry was the next day, because the next day we were playing Chicago and we were playing House of Blues, which was a packed venue.
Nice.
And I was so worried after this show. I was like, did I just blow out my voice, Because when you can't hear yourself, you push a little too hard.
Yeah.
And that could just completely blow out your voice, So as soon as the gig ended, I stopped talking. I drank a shit ton of water. I made sure to sleep. And thankfully I was okay the next day. But it was horrific. I never want to go through that again.
It's less than you want to sing with no monitor, for sure.
Yeah. And it's not like guitar or drums where you can just kind of see at least what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you can't hear yourself, you have no clue, I think I did okay. I didn't see anyone in the crowd being like, what the fuck, So
making faces.
I think I did okay. Yeah. And I think maybe the sound was so bad anyways, so that if I made any mistakes, they probably weren't noticeable. So, and definitely not a show I want to relive.
Yeah.
Now, as for best show, this one's really hard because I've played a lot of good shows.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember one that stands out more than others. I know a lot of people will name like huge festivals that they've played that were amazing, and